Please take a moment to think about yourself. Did you read newspapers today? Did you read news on the internet today? Did you talk about politics with your friend today? Did you express your feelings about any political issues today? Or did you even find any political issues today, either in local politics or national politics? In the United States, after George Floyd, a black man, was killed by a white police officer, people took to the streets to show their opposition of such injustice, and the street demonstrations spread all over the country at an unprecedented rate. And joining in this social movement, people in other countries have also actively started organizing large-scale demonstrations. How about in Japan then? Yes, there were demonstrations, which is great. Those who participated in the movement, I really appreciate it. But unfortunately, the demonstrations in Japan were very small and very few people. Also, people only talk about the issue of skin colors and avoid talking about the deeply rooted discrimination in Japan against Asian people, against especially Koreans and Chinese. When Naomi Osaka, a tennis world champion, supported the Black Lives Matter protest, harsh criticism rose in Japan, such as athletes should not talk about politics, and there is no discrimination in Japan, which were even reported by the U.S. media. Conversations like this, which talk about politics and human rights, are often taboo in Japanese society. We don't really talk about politics and human rights with friends or family. And Japanese people, especially the young generation, seldom join political activities and human rights movement. People joining protests are often seen even strange. Why is that the case? I am a human rights lawyer. In Japan, human rights lawyers are often seen leftist or biased. When I was at the law school in Japan, my dream was to become a lawyer for human rights. However, I had to hide my dream, and I couldn't tell my classmates that I joined study groups for human rights. Let's look at the current situation in Japan from a wider perspective. Ever since I was a teenager, I have been involved in international human rights activities. Recently, I have been working to make minority voices visible in Japanese diplomacy by projecting and delivering their voices beyond the border. In Japan, political and diplomatic issues are often closely related to people's core values, which include the Peace Constitution of Japan, U.S. military bases in Okinawa, and Japanese military legislation. How are the polls over those issues? In fact, according to most public polls, the majority of the people polled against the current direction of issues like the Constitution or military legislation, military bases in Okinawa. That means in many issues regarding and relating to people's core values, things are decided and changed against the people's will. But still, despite the situation, people choose not to speak out about their opinion. Even still, despite the situation where the country seems to be moving in the opposite direction of what the people seem to want, it is these same people who choose not to speak out about their opinions. That is the current Japanese situation. When I studied at the university in the United States, one of my friends, who was Republican, criticized the administration at a time which had been also Republican. He said, "We have to regard the government with critical view. If they pass a policy that we do not support, we do not agree with, we have to criticize them, even if the administration is led by the political party we support. That is a way to improve our society." When a controversial Iranian president visited our university, students found themselves divided into two sides all over campus. One side was saying, "Why did our university invite him? We should stop the event." And the other side said, "Freedom of speech is important. Let's listen and talk." In ways such as this, people always talk about and discuss political issues and organize events, regardless of their political perspective. And students actively participate in these discussions as they wish. Many non-profit and non-governmental organizations in the United States encourage and lead these discussions. These organizations place emphasis on grassroots voices. They publish policy papers to actualize grassroots ideas in the political arena. After I graduated from law school in the United States, I accepted a job at one of the largest international human rights organizations in the world. The office I commuted every day was located in one of New York's symbols, the Empire State Building. The organization occupied 2 whole floors of the building, and their comments were found in news every day. How powerful the NGOs are in the United States. I'm so impressed. In Japan, some people might say, "I don't want to join political activities because joining political activities is not fashionable at all." Or, "Organizations that are involved in politics are kind of scary." If that is what you believe, why don't you just try to make it cool in your own way? After I came back from the United States, I established a think tank in Tokyo called the New Diplomacy Initiative, in which I emulated the system and format of American think tank. Unfortunately, it was not easy to collect donations in Japan for this kind of movement, as there is no such donation culture here, as one might find in the United States. However, now, 7 years after its establishment, many college students, high school students, knocking our door and asking us, "Can I volunteer at your organization? I have an interest in politics and diplomatic issues. So I searched for volunteer opportunities on the internet, but your organization is the only one I found." This people's tendency is also reflected in the low voting rates in Japan. Voting rates of the recent national election in Japan are about 49%. The rate of 18 and 19 years old was about 32%, while the rate of those in their 20s was only 31%. Hence, even if you receive the majority votes from the younger generation in Japan, it represents only a little more than 15% of this age group. In contrast to Japan's low rates, voting rates of the recent national election in Sweden was about 87%. From the age group of 18 to 24-year-old, it was about 85%. It is substantially different from Japan's situation. In Sweden, from as early as elementary school, people have the opportunity to learn why politics is about yourself and should be considered, as well as that you are an integral part of the society. Democracy is based on the idea that all individuals are equal and that the society is established by each person's voice. Sadly, this is far from Japan's reality. Even if I speak out, nothing is going to change. This is a typical opinion of the Japanese people who don't want to get involved in political activities or even vote. It seems difficult to change. I understand. I agree. Having seen the public poll results on Constitution, military legislation, and U.S. bases in Okinawa, which I mentioned earlier, I fully understand that it is not easy to make changes in policies. However, why don't we change our viewpoints and take a look at cases in which the people's effort were acknowledged and reflected in policies made? Let's take the Japanese Peace Constitution for example. It has been in place for 75 years, since the end of the Second World War. It is recognized as the Japanese identity, not only by the Japanese people, but also by many people around the world. The idea of the peace constitution has been supported by a large number of the Japanese people, and seeing that it will not be amended for at least for a while. It is surviving, not just because of what it stands for, but because many people have made a large amount of effort to preserve it. During the coronavirus pandemic, the Japanese government tried to pass a law to extend the retirement age for public prosecutors in an attempt to postpone the retirement of a prosecutor who is close to the current administration. Many people reacted rapidly as such a law damages the independence of the judiciary. And for the first time in recent Japanese history, a large number of famous musicians, actors, and public figures spoke out despite the law's political nature, which surprised many Japanese people. As a result of the resounding of opposition, the government gave up on passing this law. To change the Japanese people's mindset that the politics is taboo, we have to change educational system, media, or so many other things that affect Japanese people's way of thinking. So many things have to be changed. However, there's one thing that everyone can start doing from today. When you see something that makes you stop and question, think about it deeply and talk about your feelings and thoughts in ways you feel comfortable. This seems like a very simple thing, but it can be the first step towards a very big change. Thank you.